Welcome to the Success Consultancy's Just Great People podcast, the podcast that introduces you to ordinary people who've done extraordinary things. My name is Barry Eustance, and I'd like to introduce you to today's guest. Hi, everybody. It's Barry Eustance here from the Success Consultancy's Just Great People podcast. I'm delighted to welcome Tiffany Barnard to our podcast today. Tiffany is a leadership and communications coach. She has her own company. She's based in Europe. I'm not going to interfere anymore with the intro, but rather let Tiffany take us from here. As usual, I will quietly sit in the corner, ask the questions that you might want me to ask. And Tiffany, welcome to the Just Great People podcast. Really delighted to meet you and to greet you.
Thank you. Thank you, Barry, for having me on. I'm delighted to be here. I'm excited to have our conversation. I'm looking forward to it.
Great. Listen, anybody it'll all be on the show notes below. Anybody who wants to get in touch with Tiffany, Tiffany's webpage and contact details will be on the show notes below this. And I thoroughly recommend that you have a look at Tiffany's homepage introductory video. It's brilliant. Just as a spoiler for you there. So Tiffany, a bit of background, just again, spoiler alert, Tiffany and I were chatting just before we hit the record button about Tiffany's commercial background in Tanzania. And with no further ado, Tiffany, over to you to fill out that story.
Excellent. Thank you. So people often say to me, where are you from? Which is meant to be quite an easy question to answer. However, I always kind of stutter. My mother's English and my father is of Greek origin, although he was born in Tanzania, as was my grandfather. So I am actually third generation Tanzanian. And my commercial background is largely based in Tanzania. It started off after university in the hotel industry. In 98, I set up my own company in the remote facilities management sector, catering to large gold mines, agricultural installations. We take over their camp and do everything for them, from cooking, cleaning, laundry to landscaping, bar, etc., etc. So still fundamentally in the hospitality industry. That was all well and good. Done other things as well. Had a consultancy company, started funeral homes. That's a whole other conversation.
that came from left field. I wasn't expecting that one. Where's that in the show notes?
So yeah, I've had a varied background as far as commercial goes. I sit on the board of a couple of companies, but I found my true passion about 6-7 years ago when I started coaching, and that is really where I'm a emeritus CEO for MML. However, my passion is truly coaching.
Yeah.
I always thought the passion was for artists. I never thought it was for people.
Well, nobody's compelling, isn't it? I mean, you've got a lifetime of acquired knowledge, understanding, wisdom, and experience. If you're the sort of person who likes to share it, which I am, and you clearly are, then you could be very passionate about it.
Absolutely. And I think it was because both professionally and personally, I've had what we like to call in coaching terms challenges. And, it was very nice when I got into coaching to find that all of those experiences were actually going to be put to some good, that I could draw on those to help support, guide other people as they were navigating their, life challenges. So it really gave a lot of meaning, which sounds corny, but it really did give meaning to everything that had happened in my life up until then. And in the last 6 years, I've not looked back.
Yeah, and to flesh that out, what would your typical client be? The sort of the range of clients that you have and who you're working with?
My clients are all high performers. Let's say their title is more or less irrelevant. I work with executives down to team leaders and to individual contributors as well. I work with people currently from the US, Europe, Africa, Australia, through to Philippines, Indonesia, Singapore, and India.
Wow.
So it is definitely a global clientele that I have. And I love it because, I get to meet so many different people from so many different industries. I work with people from all sorts of different companies. I won't name drop, but there's a lot of different industries in there. And basically they are people who they are all high performers and they all have a desire to achieve something. And it's the something that creates the problem. It's like it's almost on the tip of their tongue. They know what they want to. They can't quite get there. They feel sometimes as if they're working in a fog. They know something's missing. for them to be able to take that next step. And so, the leadership and communications element is very, very tightly intertwined. When you start to break down what people want to do, people might be looking for a promotion and they find out that, what's stopping them is the fact that they have imposter syndrome. Their self-confidence is down, and as a result of that, they find communicating to larger groups intimidating. And then one thing leads on to another. So it really is people who want to be able to know themselves better. And I believe that the clarity they get from that allows them to rediscover the choices that they have in life. And with those choices, they are able to make the changes that they want.
And that's interesting, isn't it? That you're talking here about high performers who are looking for something. And yet for a lot of people, they'd go, well, if you're a high performer, why would you? And I think I know the answer to the question that I'm going to ask, but I think it's a question that does need to be asked, and that is, why would a high performer need a coach?
Mm.
I have a view. I'm looking forward to yours.
The interesting thing is high performers, if we're going to generalize, have open mindsets. They have a growth mindset. They are always looking to learn, to improve, to take that step up. They are always moving the bar on themselves. Very often they're perfectionists. So, when they achieve one level, they think, oh, well, that's great. Let's go here. And inevitably there is friction in constantly improving, and having a coach allows you to have the space to explore yourself. A coach is there to shine a light on those areas that you may have forgotten, or areas that you simply don't know existed. A coach is there to give you a safe space to explore your ideas, to explore your blocks, because we all have them, to understand where they come from. And a coach is also there to help you change your perspective, see others' perspectives, to look at things from a different view. It's very funny because the biggest breakthroughs in coaching often come from the smallest things. It's like, people will say, but that's so simple.
Yes.
Is, the biggest change in our life does come from the smallest things that we're able to consistently do. And a coach is there to partner with you to do that. What were you thinking?
Well, now it's really interesting because I was obviously phrasing the question from perhaps our dear listener or viewer's perspective. Why? And of course, I am fully on board with what you've said. If anybody wants to get a perspective on coaching, read the book $1 Trillion Coach about Bill Campbell and the work he did with Eric Schmidt and Steve Jobs, and how important it is for high performers to have that informed objectivity coming in and grounding. So it's just the earthing rod to bring people back down to earth. I mean, these first of all, Bill Campbell declined a phone call from Steve Jobs because Bill was playing golf, and that is a pretty good grounding exercise for someone who perhaps has got a pretty strong ego and personality. And these leaders in Silicon Valley would go up the 5 steps to Bill's very, very modest office behind a shopping mall, and there'd be a whiteboard and a couple of marker pens, and off they'd go with the 5 things to focus on for the day. And these luminaries of the FANG stocks were going to this one guy, and all of them. And it makes a very compelling case for coaching. And I've interviewed Paddy Nolan, who's with Cartier and has his own consultancy now, coaching. And we had this conversation about the importance of that objectivity coming in and shining the light on the obvious that isn't obvious to the person who doesn't get it.
Exactly.
And as recently, for anybody who's in the UK, Alex Polizzi from the Forte family goes and looks at failing hotels and restaurants. And she was with this guy just very recently who had built this fantastic events and entertainment thing, but one element of it, the accommodation bit, wasn't working. And he couldn't understand it. And this guy couldn't read. He'd done it all through hard work and intellect. And Alex said, have you thought of offering your events packages as part of the hotel thing? And he went, what do you mean? He said, but that's obvious. She said, I know. Why haven't you done it? My view, we are, I think, ad idem here, Tiffany, on our perspective on
Yeah.
coaching.
Something else that's very important is that, the higher you go on the leadership ladder, the more lonely it gets. And sometimes having somebody who is simply there for you once a week, twice a month is invaluable. I'm working with one particular person. We've been working together for three years, and it's not because he hasn't made any progress. It's just that he said, these 45 minutes or an hour, we have an hour. He said they're for me. He said, I don't have to worry about what you think because I'm very adamant. It's like, don't come in and try and use words that you think won't offend me. You'll never shock me and I'll never judge you. So these literally is 1 hour. The 60 minutes are for him to talk about what he wants in the way that he wants. And he doesn't have to worry about whether I'm getting stressed because, there's problems in the business, or if I'm getting upset because there's, problems outside. There's nothing there. There's no attachment from me. And that can be very, very liberating for leaders to have that, coupled with the objectivity. And it's interesting, you said the grounding. The grounding's important. Sometimes, though, leaders need to be set free. And that's also another important aspect of the coach, is knowing, what it is that person needs. Some people have got amazing ideas, but their own character are keeping them caged in. So at that point, we need to set them free. So
Yeah, and is that an experience that you find frequently, that people are constrained by their own self-imposed barriers?
yeah, their own barriers, which are created very often from their own beliefs, which turn into limiting beliefs. These are ideas that they have, that they believe to be true, that they have never actually questioned. And these are beliefs that come from our family, from our society, from media, from culture. And they do stop people from achieving, or even believing that they can achieve in some cases. I would love to do that, but people like me just can't. What do you mean, people like
Yeah.
who are people
Yes.
like you? It is that.
Yeah.
Or the idea that, and this is my own story. People like me, I'm not one of those people that can speak in public, was my thing when I started coaching. My coach was like, what do you mean? I said, well, I'm just not one of those people. They were like, well, who are these people that you're talking about? And that was an incident when I was 10 years old that had completely blocked me from being able to talk in public. Unfortunately for everybody now, I've got over it and nobody can tell. It's not
But
an
it's the number of references I have during this podcast series and outside it, where people really are referencing the very, very real fear of public speaking and the ability. I mean, it's grabbed me. I've gone out and suddenly this gremlin grabs your throat for no apparent reason, out of nowhere, and you can't really explain it, and it happens. And then you're talking to the same people you're talking to 10 minutes ago, and suddenly it's difficult. And I did a long chat with Fiona Brennan-Scott and Charlotte Story on this. Charlotte's an actress, and she's a coach, and Fiona's a coach as well. And we were discussing this, and recently with Simon Hartley from Be World Class. Simon was saying that the imposter syndrome, it can be really, really limiting, all the way up to, you can have the world's greatest performers in X who are carrying with them this delinquent imposter syndrome that keeps tapping them on the shoulder at critical moments. And why
Yeah.
is that? Have you got a theory about that? What's the thinking?
The statistics are something along the lines of 75% of the working population worldwide have at one point in their careers suffered from imposter syndrome. And it is the fear of being outed as a fraud. So that was another thing I discovered. It's been a magical mystery tour for me, this whole coaching thing, because one of the things was like the imposter syndrome. I was like, oh, so that's a thing. I thought it was just me. I
Yes.
thought it was just me. Worrying that, everything had been too easy for me and that if I'd actually done it in Europe, I would never have succeeded. It's like I came out of university, I walked into a job, took over the family business, set up my own company. But I always had this idea that it was kind of just given to me. It was a gift that I didn't really do anything. And it didn't matter how many people were saying, well, hold on a minute, you've done all of these things. It is that gremlin, as you said, that's in the back of your head going, but did you? So it's very common when it's very common when we find things easy. Again, it comes down to high performers. High performers put a lot of pressure on themselves. They strive for perfection. They tend to be very, very agile and very good in certain areas. And that ease that they have in those areas makes them believe that in fact they don't deserve it or anybody could do it, that they don't have any real strengths. You know, the person who is good at getting up on the stage and talking, you know, might think that everybody can do it, and that really it's not an ability as such. You know, being able to listen, you know, is that a strength, or can everybody do it?
It's definitely a strength, isn't it? I
It
think it
is.
really definitely is a strength.
And, you know, when I'm coaching people and they're like, well, you know, I can't really do anything well. I'm like, well, hold on a second. You have got to this level in your organization. Do you think, you know, what level of respect do you have for the decision makers in your org? And they're like, oh, well, they're all great people and they're all amazing at what they do. And it's like, so did they like make a mistake when they, you know, hired you? And they're like, well, you know, but, you know, I think maybe they didn't realize, hold on, you've been promoted 3 times since then. So it is this idea that is like, is dumb luck that people don't really see, that, you know, they're just lucky that, you know, I'm going to do something and I'm going to be exposed for the fraud that I am. And it is a question of self-confidence. It is a question of being able to identify the strengths that we have, the abilities that we have, the things that we're good at, and being able to actually categorize those as capabilities rather than, oh, everybody's good at them. You will be able to spot very often the imposter syndrome sufferers, because if you give them a compliment, they'll go, oh, no, but it was nothing.
Yeah, how interesting. How
Yeah.
interesting. It's something I
You
didn't
know,
mean to
carry
interrupt, but this may resonate with one or two listeners and viewers of this podcast. So dear listener and dear viewer, I'm going to ask the question. Tiffany, if that's resonating with someone, what's your guidance for working through that imposter syndrome? What is the methodology that you'd used to help someone work through that?
It's I would say it's quite challenging to do it by yourself, because you're always going to come up against the same block of, yeah, well, everybody can do that. So my advice would be to work with somebody who you respect. And the respect is important because you need to work through in identifying what your skills are. And very often we can't see our skills. We tend to focus very much on the things that we can't do. And we brush off the things that we are very good at and give them very little consideration. So it's working with somebody who you respect, who can say, well, you know, these are the abilities. I was going off track here. Bear with me. I was talking with somebody who got a high power job, and they were saying, oh, you know, I feel as if I'm losing my mind, blah, blah, blah. She's also a mum of 4. And she was going, I don't feel as if I have the skills in the office place. So we started talking about what she does at home. And I said, but all of those skills that you've developed with your 4 kids at home, cognitive thinking, cognitive agility, you know, when things don't quite happen as you expect them to, conflict resolution, negotiation, active listening, acknowledgement and validation, empowerment. These are all leadership skills. We are all leaders in some area of our life. Those are all skills. And very often parents tend to like dismiss them or not even recognize them. But we are all leaders in some area of our life, and we need to be able to recognize that so that we can take those skills and we can transfer them into the workplace. So, for example, you leading a team. A lot of people, especially high performers, tend to think that they should do everything, because if they delegate too much, it's going to be seen as them being lazy. Okay. So the question is, well, if you don't delegate, what opportunities are you giving to your team? What would you have felt like if your leader at the time didn't delegate to you? What opportunities would you have missed if you hadn't been delegated to? And that starts to change the mind shift. And the example in the family side is, if you keep tying your son's shoelaces, maybe it may save time.
But it gets a bit tedious when they're 25.
When they're 25, when they come up and they go, Daddy, can you do my shoelaces? It's exactly the same thing.
Exactly. And the Hilary Scarlett and Julie Hodges have been on the Just Great People podcast a couple of times. And we were discussing the people centricity of change, and how it is important that change isn't initiated as a top-down process, but is an inclusive process where the stakeholders, the employees, are part of the change, buy into the change, are energized by the change, want the change, and want to participate in it. And it's exactly the same thing, isn't it? This sense that, do you know, I flew airplanes. Tiffany's husband Marcus flew airplanes, and one of the things I was very quick to do, was to put the autopilot in after takeoff, even if I was the handling pilot, because that freed me up to take a bigger picture.
Quite right.
And it reduced the workload. Delegation number one.
It also safeguarded your energy.
Exactly.
It safeguarded your energy. Why use your energy at that point in time when it wasn't needed?
And if you've got this massive asset base of highly capable people who are bursting with ideas, energy, and leadership at all levels, and will willingly pour it out for you and contribute to the big picture, why wouldn't you do it?
They don't. They really don't. I mean, I work with people from some of the biggest organizations in the world, and none of them do. They all try and manage the change in secrecy, and it is inevitably doomed to failure because when you try,
Inevitably.
because when you try and shroud things in secret, there was a thing that we used to say in the hotel. We go, this house, there's no secrets, and there are never any secrets in any house. So rumors start, and when rumors start, you have people start to feel uncomfortable. They start to feel as if there's their positions are unsafe. There's instability in the air, and so when you try and pretend that nobody's going to notice the change is happening, you lose the good people because they'll jump ship. They'll go somewhere where it's going to be more safe, basically. It's going to be more consistent, more stable. And you're going to get left with the people who don't jump ship because, well, maybe there's nowhere to go. So it is something where, as you said, you have this pool of people who have amazing ideas, who have different perspectives, and who can give you just a wealth of information from different aspects, different points of view.
And leadership. They will pour out leadership where you didn't even expect it.
Exactly. And if they're part of the process, they will also be bought into the change, which means the change will be far smoother.
Yeah. Bill Lucia from HMS, which was an S&P 500 company, had 65% of his workforce involved in the change program at any given time, and it was a repetitive, ongoing basis. I mean, it's a bit of a mantra of mine, so I apologize if I'm being slightly pedantic on it. But Bill was employing a device exactly as Tiffany suggested, that you've got this fantastic resource. If it's top down, in secret by the select few, making people do stuff that they didn't even know about, never mind wanting to do it. As the Kotter principles are, it's the select few plus the diverse many, and it's not about making people do something, having to do it. It's actually engaging their hearts, their emotions, to actually join in the process, and to encourage leadership at all levels, because guess what? You'll surprise everybody, not least yourself.
Yeah. And the other thing that is really important is that when you try and manage change in secret, you are damaging the trust. And trust is based on 4 pillars. And those pillars are care for something other than oneself, reliability, competence, and sincerity. So if you are going to manage these things in secret, all 4 of those pillars are thrown out and there is no longer any trust, which means asking people to then give their all, stay motivated, be focused, and move forward is going to become far more difficult. And for that top down, attitude comes from the top. Always. The culture comes from the top. So if you're going to have a culture of secrecy at the very top levels, you're going to have that secrecy that
all the way through.
All the way through.
And that's generating siloed thinking, isn't it?
Exactly.
All the way through the organization. Why do you think these, I mean, getting back to Alex Polizzi's, customer moment where that's obvious, isn't it? Why are these apparently obvious things ignored in some of the world's biggest companies? Why aren't they understood?
I have no idea. I have no idea. And it's something that there's been many, many huge reorgs in some of these companies recently. And, talking to even some of the higher level people, it's like nobody seems to understand where it comes from. Now, some would argue that there are legalities. If you give information, then who is going to start to talk about it? If there are going to be leaks to the press, to the media, there's a lot of bottom covering that goes on as well, I think, and that's one of the main reasons. Is like it's a sense of trying to keep control, but you can't control these things.
No. And increasingly more difficult, I think, in the age of instant communication, social media, and the connected world, isn't it?
Yeah, and then human nature is one that we're not made to keep secrets. We are not able to
No.
keep secrets, and we all have that one friend who we go, don't tell anyone, but because we can't. It's bigger than us, all right? Two people know it's not a secret. And so when you've got take that to an organizational context, you've got a whole board, I'm guessing, who know about these things, probably with the next level down who are also aware. Now, each one of those people have got that one friend who's going,
Exactly. That's right.
I have to tell you this.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, let he have not sinned cast the first stone. And it's obvious. And I'm surprised though that you have the world is there are MBAs and business schools worldwide. I certainly know that Julie Hodges is beating the drum for people-centric change, and people go, yeah, but that's change. What's that got to do with me? Let's start with everything. Change is the role of leaders, and the domain of leaders is the future. That's what it's all about. Changes, and it's accelerating. We can come on to AI in a minute, Tiffany. That'll occupy the next half hour.
That's it.
But change is ubiquitous, and unless organizations are now spooling up as an organization to have this people-centric change, i.e. the change that Tiffany, Julie, and Hillary and I all believe are the right things, and Dr. Cotter believe are the right way of doing it. That is, get your people involved, get the buy-in, get the communication, encourage leadership. It's not a secret. It's about all of us, and making that work in a structured way, and it is structured. Then your organization is not going to survive the next few decades at the current rate of change.
Yeah, no. And I mean, change is the only constant in our lives. And ironically, people fear change without noticing or without realizing that we go through change every single day. I mean, if you've got children, you go through change because, they go from babies to walking to kindergarten to primary school to graduate. This is all change. If we don't, as individuals, we go through change. We get older. We can do things differently. We do things differently. Our bodies don't work the same way. It's like whether we try and stop it or not, change is the only constant. People around us are changing. The world is changing. We have to adapt to things. So change is the only constant in our lives. And so embracing that, and actually I think one of the important things in change management is pointing out that your life is going to change every single day. And most of the things you just get on with, it's like there's a new TV station that's changed, and you're like, oh, well, I'll never watch that because but you do, you do. And we end up with all of the streaming things, which we swore that we were never going to go away from Netflix, for example, maybe. But that's it. These things come on. AI, you brought it up 6 months ago. In the area of coaching, everybody was like, oh, well, we'll never use that and there's no future for it. And I mean, other people, seem to think that AI was going to come out of their computers and take over their lives and is never going to catch on. You can't use AI. It makes you lazy. Well, I remember when Google came up and nobody's using Encyclopedia Britannicas anymore. So really, I mean, why would you not use a tool that you have to do
Absolutely.
things that you don't enjoy necessarily doing, but that you have to do? And so use it so that you free up your time so that you can actually do something that gives value to your life, to you, to your clients, to whoever, to the company. Change is inevitable and we have to embrace it. We cannot ignore it because otherwise we will simply be left behind.
No, I'm absolutely on side. And I'm a heavy user of AI. And why wouldn't I be? Because the tool that I actually use a huge amount with clients in the non-coaching side, but in the corporate development and strategy side, is StratNav app, which has increasingly improved its AI backend to augment what can be offered to the user. And it's unbelievably good. But the big caveat is that AI does a lot of stuff very, very well that humans actually aren't particularly good at. But humans do a lot of stuff that AI will never be able to do because we've got this 2 million-year-old brain connected to a human who is actually interacting with other humans.
Yeah.
And that is a sacred chalice that needs to be passed on at a human level. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, not at all. I got passionate there for a minute because I agree. And also I think the fact that humans have a heart, I think that's one of the biggest things that sets us apart, is that we are able to look at each other. Well, some of us are able to look at each other and read the emotions from the person in front of us, from their face, from their body language, from the tone of their voice. And this is something that computers will never be able to do. Well, never say never. At the moment, they couldn't do it.
At the moment. And that is the big caveat. But what is unlikely to change, if the right balance between AI and human authority is maintained, is that AI is a tool in the service of humans and beings as a whole. And that the ultimate stakeholder for it are humans.
Mhm.
And that human interaction is critically important. It's taken us 2 million years to evolve basically from where we started to where we are now. And that's unlikely to change in well, anytime soon, unless of course we self-extinguish, which is also another capability that we've managed to develop at our peril. But AI is a tool and needs to be treated thus, and is actually, to be honest, it's hallucinating between 10 and 15% of the time. Would you get in an airplane if the pilots were hallucinating 10 to
Well,
15% of the time?
this is an interesting question because one of the companies that I work with is Google, and I have quite a lot of clients from Google. And the question came up the other day about self-driving cars. Would you get in one? And I said, as a human being, not a hope. I said that need to control. I don't know. I just feel safer when there's somebody else at the wheel, which is fundamentally ridiculous because we are fallible. We make mistakes. We, switch off. We fall asleep at the wheel. So there are things that can happen, but still, the fact that there isn't a physical human being sitting there, scares me. I said, however, I believe it's an inevitability that we will also get used to. We get into trains which don't have drivers.
Yeah, we do. But when you come to the big state ones, like you get an airplane in London and fly to Hong Kong, it's deeply reassuring because I think there is significant value in having the person who is actually controlling the equipment supported by AI, by all means. Let's face it, the Airbus that I flew and Marcus flew had fly-by-wire and all the whiz-bang stuff that you could ever imagine is the most sophisticated airplane flying at the time, in my judgment. And that also helped us do a better job and fly further, faster, etc. But it was nice to know that the person in seat 29A could sit there and, well, they've got a common and shared interest in the outcome of this flight.
Yes, which is to arrive.
Which is to arrive, is to get home for tea.
I had an interesting conversation yesterday because I was scrolling and it came up. How do you give a ticket to a driverless car? And so the conversation was with Marcus, and he goes, "Well, you shouldn't have to." And I said, "Well, computers can make mistakes." And he goes, "Yes, but the computer is making a mistake, which means the external information is somehow incorrect. So, for example, maybe the information he's getting is that the speed limit is 50 when in fact has been changed recently to 40. But those sensors haven't been changed." He goes, "Because the computer is not looking to break the law like humans are. Well, we're not looking to, but we can." So it was late and it was far too philosophical for me. So that's what I'm going to talk about. But the thing is, it does raise an interesting question because it's like, if the computer is programmed to have your utmost safety at heart, maybe we would be safer with them. I don't know.
Yeah, well, until the little bit of machine code sitting in the back end. I remember one aircraft manufacturer said, "Map shift impossible." It can't happen. There's a 10 to -9 chance of that happening. And guess what? We got map shift more than once. So we're humans. We live in a human world which we share with our fellow beings and need to be respectful of all of those things. We've had tools like fire and wheels and carts
Yeah.
and horses that work with us as part of our environment. But ultimately, there's that human element. And if the ultimate stakeholder is human, I think the human element needs to be retained. Would I want to be coached by AI? Don't think so.
You see, that is fundamentally heart-centered, and that's why I believe that it's something that we do crave, that connection, that human connection. So I think that that will never change. However, my grandmother is 95 years old, and when they started bringing in these newfangled mod cons, and she was living on a farm in Africa, literally, like washing machines. I'm not going to have one of those in my house. Like this spooky thing. No way. No way. So
No.
we do adapt. We do adapt.
Well, there's lots to unpack, and I think we should continue the unpacking. We're getting time out and time expired at the moment. So, Tiffany, would you come back and we can continue the conversation? It'd be great, and we will entrust our dear listener and viewers to pick us up on some of the philosophical questions we've raised today, and we will look forward to reconvening on a Just Great People podcast very, very soon. And for those of you, the observant listeners and viewers who want to know who Marcus is, we'll tell you, but at the next podcast. So there you go. Well, reason to tune in next time. Tiffany Barnard, thank you so much. It's been great talking to Tiffany. Really insightful and really invaluable. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Barry, for having me on. It's been an absolute delight. Loved it. Thank you.
Paragalo. If you'd like to know more about the Success Consultancy's People, Change, Leadership and Management Framework, please simply click on the QR code or in the link in the show notes below. And please do remember to like and subscribe the Just Great People podcast. Thank you. So that's it for today's Just Great People podcast from the Success Consultancy. We hope and trust you've enjoyed it. Please join us next time, and please do remember to subscribe. Thanks for joining us.